Hello, everyone. Susan Gerbic here from Psychics Explained. I have been working on a series of videos of psychic medium Mark Anthony, who is a retired personal injury attorney. I think he's retired. He said that he was, so I assume that means he's retired. He operated in Washington, D.C., Florida, and supposedly was operating in front of the Supreme Court. I don't know. I don't know a lot about him personally, but I have been seeing that he is now a uh, honorary board member of Helping Parents Heal, which is a community that believes mediumship is a way of helping people get through grief. So they bring in mediums all the time to their community of grieving parents. And so I've been looking at his videos, Mark Anthony, and I have, I think, four evaluations of his readings, and I'm about to make a fifth. So check out the playlist for Mark Anthony. But what I did this morning, I got up and had breakfast, got started, and I fell into a rabbit hole. And here it is after 5 o'clock on the same day. What day is this? Wednesday. And I have decided that I'm going to show you what I found. Now, I was just doing a little research on who he is and that kind of thing, and I stumbled across a video that he had made for the TV show The Doctors. And this was back in 2015. And so I have edited the clips for fair use to be able to comment on them. So they are altered and the audio is sped up a little bit and some things have happened to it because I've not worked with The Doctors before. Some of these organizations just have they want to slap you down and delete your video and the appeal process, even though I have right to be able to comment on their video. It's a painful process. So pardon me for altering it a little bit, but it's still fine. You'll be able to hear everything that you want to hear. So what's going on is they have him on this show in 2015, and he starts talking about his book, and it's the Doctors is a TV show that doesn't really have any science in it. At least I've not been able to see any science in it, even though it's called The Doctors. It's just these people, this panel of people, I don't know who they are, but I guess they're famous, are there, and they're just credulous, just handing him softball after softball. And they bring on him to give a reading to a father and a cousin of a woman who had been murdered. Now, I really hate to bring these kinds of things in because it's like, oh, this woman's death has already been, sensationalized. I'm sure there's psychics all over the place saying they've solved the case and on and on and on. Even the interesting thing is on the show, The Doctors, they don't list her last name, nor do they name the last name of the father and the cousin who are there. And they say, if you have any tips, phone them in to this like 1-800 crime solving thing. So at no point do they list the last name of the woman who's murdered or the an actual tip line to a police department to do so. So I thought that was interesting, but it really didn't take more than a couple clicks for me to find out who this person really is, especially because the case is pretty much solved right now. It's about to go to trial. So this is 2025 now. So I'm going to cover it a little bit and I'll tell you who she is, but I'm not going to get into the great details of the case. Also want to look at is, did psychic medium Mark Anthony do as he claimed and gave information to the parents that would have been able to solve the case, or at least to find the person who was responsible? Because, well, as you'll see from these clips, he seems to think he's helping police. And on his own website, this is one of the links that he gives for his media appearances that he was on The Doctors. And it says on his website that he's going to be in a short film documentary about solving a cold case file. So I assume it's this one. I mean, maybe we'll stumble across another one he was involved in. Yeah, so I think it's this one. This is probably his best of all of them. So I'm going to show you some clips. They're all under 30 seconds for obvious reasons. And we're going to look at these and then I'm going to comment on them. And let's get our way through here and see if Mark Anthony actually assisted the police in any way of helping solve this horrendous murder of this woman that had happened in 2015. Okay. Oh, to clear this up, I'm sorry. I said the doctor's interview was in 2015. It was actually in April. Well, the video was released in April 24th, 2017. So 2 years and a couple months after the murder. So the murder happens in February of 2018. The TV show, The Doctors, is that Mark Anthony is on, is 2017. Okay, so now let's go over and look at the clip. Sorry about that, you guys. That's what I get trying to do too many things at once, one day.
Psychic lawyer Mark Anthony. Mark, welcome to the show. Thank you. Fascinating topic. As a psychic lawyer, I'm curious how you bring your work as a psychic into the law.
Well, both jobs deal with evidence. As an attorney, you have to have evidence to prove your case in court. And as a psychic medium, I have to present evidence which is transmitted to me from a spirit to the recipient that can be verified.
Okay, did you get that? So he's got information coming from the spirit that's going to give him verified evidence that he will be able to use, that is just blatant evidence that he'll be able to, I guess, give it to the police or something of the sort. This clip just makes me laugh because it's as if she had memorized this little thing she's supposed to say. Oh, and did I hear that you wrote a book and it was called this exact thing? And it's just kind of funny the way she says it, as if it's rehearsed, probably because it is.
And I understand you've written a book, too, called Evidence of Eternity. Tell us about that.
Evidence of Eternity bridges the gap between the spiritual and the scientific, and I've redefined the terms in mediumship, which were coined in the Victorian era, and I brought it into the 21st century based on science, theoretical physics, human physiology, and evidence. Because what I've found is that faith and science are not mutually exclusive.
You got that? Faith and science are not mutually exclusive. Oh, hey, I heard you wrote a book. Can you tell us all about the book? Oh, come on now.
Have you worked with law enforcement in the past to help them find?
Now, here comes the next question from an attorney. She says she's an attorney. Again, it sounds like it's been rehearsed, what she's going to ask him. You know, what do you want for reality TV?
Have you worked with law enforcement in the past to help them find, say, bodies or people that have gone missing? Have you been able to help law enforcement?
I've been consulted a number of times with law enforcement, and what people have to realize that psychic intuition and messages from spirits, that's hearsay. And as an attorney, we know that hearsay is an out-of-court statement offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted. Can you think of anything more hearsay than something from a spirit? But a little bit. But what it does is it can lead the police on the trail to find admissible evidence, which can then lead to the arrest and hopefully the conviction of the murderer.
So the answer is no. You've never helped a police find evidence of a murderer, right? Is that what you're trying to say? Okay. So yeah, no. We see this a lot. The people who work in the world that I do, that investigate these psychics and grief vampires, you know, the psychic mediums of the world, psychic detectives, which are some of the lowest of the low of all. I mean, goodness gracious. They always say, I was consulted or I helped, but I can't talk about it or anything like that. The case is pending or I can't do it. But this was 2017. And we're just now, I think the man was just arrested in 2018. They find him. Okay. So it does take a little bit of time. They find this guy in 2018. Okay. So let me set this up for a second. What's happening is he is going to give a reading to the father of the murdered victim and the cousin of the murdered victim. And apparently he's supposed to know nothing about who it is they want to contact or anything of the sort. He's been flown in for this TV show. And we know that the reading that he's giving these two is edited because it's only a minute or so long. And of course, he was talking to him for a lot longer than that. So the best bits, the most conclusive evidence he has, the best part of it are going to be in this 1.5 minute clip. I'll show you a little bit and then we'll stop.
I want you to take a deep breath. Okay. I'm getting a younger female coming through, and what I'm getting with her is a shearing sensation going right through her body, which is indicating a very abrupt passing. Does that make sense? She's very happy that you're here and doing this. Just give me the Gemini time frame. You're smiling.
It's her birth time.
She keeps showing me the number 18, 18, 18. You're nodding. All right, in what way?
The day she passed.
Was the 18th. Are you having any problems in the throat area, or was that with her? Because I'm feeling here, here, and here. It feels like someone's, I hate to say this, like choking her. Okay, that makes more sense with her?
Yes.
She was murdered. That's what this feels like. She knew the attacker, too.
All right. Okay, so I think he did know something. You don't fly from wherever he lives in Florida all in to do this TV show with no knowledge. He must have picked up something from somewhere around the not the audience, but the people who were working there. Something. He might not have known the woman's name, but he knew enough to know that it was probably being called in for a murder, and it was a female, and some other things like that. I'm not shocked if he knew that, because again, this is not a scientific test. There are no controls. This is just a TV show trying to get ratings, and they bring in the psychic and they add this fancy music. Can you hear the music? Make sure you pay attention to the music, because that's how you know. It's a subtle reminder to us watching, because we're of a TV generation, movies and so on. We've grown up with it, that we don't even notice it. But it tells us when to get emotional, when there's something really powerful about to happen, when you're supposed to tear up, when you're supposed to get that tingly feeling. So it's there, it's in the background, and that's really good incidental music. So as we hear, he tells them, I'm getting a younger female, a shearing sensation, which could mean a quick passing, could mean she's happy you're getting the reading. Okay, so if she's happy that he's getting the reading with this medium, then I'm sure she's going to give us some really good evidence, right? Because she's happy. She's excited about him getting the reading from her father and her cousin. Okay, a Gemini time frame, which means what? Does it mean she was a Gemini, or the murder happened during a Gemini, or what does that mean? And it doesn't mean anything, except that there are 12 zodiac symbols, right? So his odds of hitting one that are specific to this murdered woman are 1 in 12. Remember, this is heavily edited. The people who edited the video that we're seeing, the 1 minute video, know who the person is and what the scenario is. And they want to edit it so that it makes him look as good as possible, and therefore makes the TV show as good as possible. So we don't know if he spent 15 minutes on all kinds of just other stuff, and they've edited it to just the Gemini thing where the woman says, oh, that's accurate. Also, 18, 18, 18, that part where she says that he's getting the number 18. Again, we don't know if a lot of other numbers were thrown out there. And the 18th was the day that she was murdered. And like I said, we don't know if there was other numbers thrown out there. And 18 is the one that they decided to go with in the edit, because it pertains to the date she was murdered. He says, are you having problems with your throat? Looking at her. He can see her. And if she's like, no, she does. She looks confused. But if she's giving this like, no, and he goes, oh, is it pertain to her? So that's cold reading. You're watching the person, you're saying something, and then you're going from the feedback the person's giving you. So if he doesn't know much except that she was murdered, and he says, I'm getting something in the neck, like in the throat, he could turn that to be, let's say she had been shot or something like that. He could turn that to be she stopped breathing and she was having problems breathing. No kidding. So maybe she was having problems breathing. And then he says, so, okay. Now, from this point on, he says she was murdered, and then you got that fancy music, right? So then at this point, we're supposed to be getting the evidence that shows that he could give to the police that it helped them find the murderer. At this point, boom, she's been murdered. Okay, she's happy about this. She's happy they're there. So let's see the evidence. Okay, here it is. You guys ready? I hope you're sitting down. I'm sitting down. It's going to get exciting. I got a cat sitting down over here too.
We believe she was tracked.
That's exactly what I'm getting, is that he was watching her for a while. She keeps talking about the precipitating events and provoking this. Monday, Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday. Does that make any sense?
It's a Tuesday night.
She passed on a Tuesday night?
Yeah.
She was very worried on that Monday. That's what she keeps conveying. It feels to me that the police are overlooking some of the evidence. She says, go through the emails, go through.
Stop here for just a second, because one of the things that happened is he says Monday, Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday. And the father says she was murdered on a Tuesday. Well, she was actually murdered on the 18th of February 2015. So I pulled up a calendar, those generic calendars that let you look up the days of the week and so on. And let me show you what it looks like. And you can go check my work. Please always don't just believe me because I say so. So February 18th is actually a Wednesday. So the father said it was a Tuesday she was murdered on. No, it was the 18th. So she was murdered on the 18th. So he got it wrong. The psychic said there's some some reason for Monday, Tuesday, and that she was really worried on Monday. So the father got it wrong. And, that's fine. Stress, remembering incorrectly.
Through the emails. She keeps talking about DNA.
That's all there is.
I don't know anything about the case, but that's a verifiable fact following the message. Do you want to ask her any questions?
Who did this to you?
It's weird because I keep getting Terrence and I keep getting like Frank or Franklin. That could be a place, that could be a name. I get that she knew this person though. She keeps showing bars. This guy's gonna get caught. He's gonna end up in jail. That's it. They're backing off.
That's it. They're backing off. So she doesn't really give him any information. She says that it's somebody she knew, that she was worried on Monday, that some precipitating events provoked this. Something about Monday, Tuesday. It obviously wasn't the day she died, so something else. And police are overlooking the evidence. They should be going through her emails. And there's DNA. And the father's like, well, that's all we got is DNA. I mean, I'm sitting here in 2025. We're watching this here in many years later. And DNA is like gold, right? That is beyond gold to have DNA. It's better than having an eyewitness, or it's better than having a cell phone tower. It's better than all kinds of things that you could possibly have. DNA is just a matter of time. They're going to figure out who it is when you have DNA. So then he says, Terrence, Frank, Franklin. So specific names. Keep those names in mind. And they could be people or they could be places. Because I guess I got fuzzy with the reception he was getting from the dead woman. And she knew this person. Go through those emails. And he says he's going to get caught and he's going to end up in jail. And he kind of gets this little smirky look like he's going to get justice in the end. Kind of creepy, I think. He is a personal injury attorney, or at least was. Just saying. He said she showed him bars. Well, how do you know that those bars didn't mean something? Maybe he worked in a prison. Maybe he worked in the jail. Maybe he worked in a saloon that had those old-fashioned bars. I don't know. But I guess that means that he knows she's going to get justice. But that was it. So is that enough information, you think, that could be given to the police so they could find this guy? What do you think? We got some first names. He's told him to go back and look through those emails again, because they're already looking through the emails, and that she knew the guy. And how is that going to help solve the case? Probably it isn't. So there is a little bit more, and he does give a little more information, Mark Anthony does. And I'm going to show you that just in the fairness.
We're now joined in the audience by Harley and Jody. And first of all, we're so sorry for your loss.
Again.
I'm curious in watching that because obviously we don't know the heartbreak that you're going through, but what was that experience like with Mark?
It was pretty enlightening. He seemed to come to new things very quickly, pretty accurately. And it's things that a lot of people don't know. Whether he read the case or not, that data is not public. So the fact that he knew it was pretty impressive.
So I don't know what that could possibly be, because what he said was just a lot of stuff. So yeah, the things he said, like Terrence and Frank and Franklin, those aren't in the police report anywhere. That's evidence of nothing. It's just somebody's name or a place. It doesn't even tell it tells us if that was the person's first name or last name, middle name, the street they lived on, where they're from, where they currently live, in what city. Terrence, Franklin, it doesn't give us anything. It tells us nothing. So those specifics were not known to the police because they're not specific. Monday, Tuesday, that's not specific. Go back and look at the emails. We already knew that they were looking at the emails. I think it's the first thing they do is try to find if she knew the person, if there's any association with the person. So, right? Okay.
Mark, I want to ask you, because when you met Jody and Harley, you knew nothing about what they were going through.
Not at all. The way it was set up was I just arrived for the reading, and we sat down, and I did the session with them. I'd never met them. I know absolutely nothing about the case prior to it.
Again, we don't know how accurate that is. If he might have picked up a little bit from, the makeup artist. Obviously, he's got full on makeup on, and his hair is done, and all that kind of stuff. You're in the facility for quite a while to get all that done. I know I've done some TV shoots myself, and there's a lot of waiting around, a lot of talking to people, and people pick up things. And he could have heard something about that he would be doing a reading for a family that had a murdered female, and he might have picked up a little bit about that. So again, it's not a controlled test. Even still, what he did tell them wasn't that out there. I mean, he could have come in cold and probably have given the same kind of information, especially since the video is edited by the people who want the reading to look as real as possible. And we know that it had to be more than a minute and a half of reading. And we just watched the entire reading that they showed on the doctors. And so they didn't fly him in to do a minute and a half reading of these two people. It was probably, 20, 30 minutes long, if not more than that. And then it's been edited down to that minute and a half for the highlights, the best hits. So we just don't know. It looks good. It looks kind of accurate because they want it to look really good and really accurate. These people are paid big bucks to do the editing. It's not like Susan Gerbic over here at her house in Catnip Corners trying to figure out how to get these edited correctly.
One of the things that came through, I kept seeing him depicted in red, which indicates a crime of passion. It was a very physical guy, bit of a beer belly on him, brown chestnut-colored hair, and he has, what I was getting, he's left the state. Now, Harley indicated that the police have been going through her emails, but I was getting a specific time frame between December 20th and January 20th that there's something in the emails, and that she may have more than one email account. The police are missing this.
So when in doubt, blame the victim or blame the police. Right. So he's given us a little bit more information. He says that the man is a very physical guy. He has a bit of a beer belly, and he has brown chestnut colored hair, and he's probably left the state. This is Arizona. Is that enough information to find the man? Nothing about a name other than Terrence or Frank or Franklin. Nothing about an address. nothing about where she knows the guy from. Was it work? Was it a place she frequented to go grocery shopping? Was it somebody who wears red someplace? I mean, we don't know anything. Is that enough information for the police to be able to find the person? Because that's really what's coming down to. Are these psychics just throwing out all kinds of random whatevers, whatever they feel, whatever they're sensing, with, not realizing there's going to be somebody like me who's going to go over this in extreme detail over and over and over again, and really think about this, and have people like yourselves there watching this video and trying to get just like, let me rewind that. Let me see what he actually said. Again, remember, this video is edited to make it look as good as possible. But in this case, what we're seeing, they don't know the answer. So before, when he was giving a reading to the parents, to the father and the cousin, he's giving the reading to them, and the editors know what to look for. They know they're trying to get to a murdered female who's, someone. So again, we're blaming the police. He wants them to look through December 20th to January 20th specifically. She dies in February. And there's something in the emails, and there may be more than one email. Well, don't you think that the police kind of know what they're doing and are looking into this? So again, he's not telling the police this. He's telling the people in the audience, the father and the cousin, to tell the police. Some reason or other, he's not able to tell the police.
And they need to go through it again, because I believe from what was being transmitted to me that the identity of the killer could be ascertained through that. But it really feels to me like he's going to slip up and end up behind bars.
Well, they have DNA, so it's only a matter of time, especially as we get, closer to the 2020s, and we have better access to databases and genealogy databases, where we're able to solve cold cases and problems of that source, where we have any kind of DNA. It's much more likely to happen. It's just funding and time. And these cases can take $5,000 to $10,000 to hire a company that deals with this kind of stuff. But once they have the DNA in the database, it's not that hard to figure out. This is becoming an expertise these days. And a lot of cold cases are getting solved because of DNA, not because of psychics.
So Harley and Jody, I want to ask you what you'll now do with this information, and I'm assuming that you've continued to be resources to the investigators. Where do you go from here now that you've done this?
Some of the information that Mark has given us, we'll share with the Scottsdale Police Department. Maybe they can go forward with some of the details that he shared with us. And we just want some closure with this.
You better believe she wants some closure with this. And I just realized at the end, it's Scottsdale Police Department, not whatever they thought I was saying. They thought she was saying it's Scottsdale, Arizona is where this happened. And the community there was just absolutely devastated. So not only because the woman who died was a 31-year-old woman living alone, and it just is so awful and tragic. And what happened to her was just awful. Not only that, but they don't know if there's a serial killer loose in the neighborhood, or if it's just a one-time thing. But, Mark Anthony thinks it was a crime of passion. Now, I don't know about you, but what happens to this woman isn't a crime of passion. When we're dealing with SA, which is a word I have to use, and I can't use the 4-letter word that starts with an R on YouTube. But when we're dealing with something like that, severely abusive wounds and such to this woman who was she was found completely nude, blood all over the place. And there was bleach attempting to clean it up all over. She smelled of bleach. And all the awful things that happened to her. So that doesn't seem like a crime of passion. I don't know if he's trying to say it was a boyfriend or something of hers, but it just kind of really rubs me the wrong way. As a woman, maybe it's just me, but I don't think that's a crime of passion. That's a crime of violence. And so anyway, he's saying that the murderer is going to slip up and they're going to be caught. So that's what he says. That's what's been transmitted to him. So I'm going to show you the answer because I know who the person is and I know what ends up happening. So I'm asking you guys at this moment in time, knowing as little as you know, or all we know that we've been given by Mark Anthony and the father and the cousin of this person, is that enough for the police department, the Scottsdale Police Department, to go out and try to find who did this? Please leave me a comment in the under the video. And I'm going to point out one more time that the evidence, this evidence that Mark Anthony is giving to this family is for the family to give it to the Scottsdale Police Department. So I guess the Scottsdale Police Department is going to get a phone call from these people saying, oh yeah, we were on this TV show and they had this psychic, Mark Anthony. I'm sure you know who he is because he's probably been solving lots of cases. Well, he told us to look for a guy with he's physical and he's got a beer belly and he's got brown chestnut colored hair. He's left the state, doesn't tell us which state, but she knew him. The information was in the emails that you guys must be just ignoring, or look for her other email account. But look specifically between December 20th and January 20th. Oh, and look for somebody named Terrence, Frank, or Franklin, or possibly that refers to a place, which could be a city somewhere else in the United States, or I guess it could be a street name. And we don't know if Terrence, Frank, or Franklin is a first name or a last name, middle name. Oh, and something about Monday, Tuesdays, and 18th. So we assume that means when she died, but it might mean something else like a house number, or there was an 18 on his license plate, or yeah. And that's all he's got. You think if she just shut it down right there, that maybe they could have like gone to lunch or something and come back and said, okay, let's try this again. All right. Murdered victim, please come through again. We need a little more specific than that. So could we get a little bit more, maybe a last name, maybe something? No, it's just done and it's in the can and they're going to edit it and let's go talk to the audience and so on. It just kind of makes you wonder about that. And again, why is Mark Anthony not got such a great reputation with the police that he is just got a hotline to the police? Why can't he relate it to the police and not have the and then the police could bring him in for more interviews and they could talk to him and get more information? And no, why is it that they have to go through these family members? So it must be a very interesting call when the family members tell the police that. Fascinating. So let's look at the evidence. Okay, so what ends up happening? And let me look at my notes because I'm not going to show you clips on this because I just really don't want to. I really don't want to focus in so much on the crime because it's very exploitive. I want to focus really only on the reading that this Mark Anthony grief vampire person here is doing. So what happens is, the name of the murder victim, so you can look it up, is Allison Feldman, Allison Feldman, and this is going to be a big deal pretty soon because it's going to it's getting close to going to court, going to trial. So if you follow true crime, this will be one of those true crime things. So the story is, from what I've been able to glean from the papers, is that the father and mother of this young woman had a very close relationship with her daughter. The mother was a flight attendant and the father, I don't really know what he does, but they talked to the daughter, one of them at least once a day. They lived in Minnesota, but the mother was a flight attendant. She was flying all over. They had seen Allison just before her murder. Allison had a boyfriend, and he's blurred out in all the videos. We don't even know what his name is. The father had been trying to get a hold of her, but couldn't get a hold of his daughter. She wasn't even picking up at all. So he thought that was strange, texting or calling her. And so he called the police department in Scottsdale Police Department to go do a wellness check on her. And so right before the police show up, the boyfriend shows up and discovers the crime scene. And the neighbors say they saw him appear like 15 minutes before the police, and then he goes in, and then they see him out on the curb, and he's just bawling his head off. And then the police show up, and they come in, and it's an awful scene. There's obvious evidence of a cleanup. Like I said, there's bleach that had been put on the body and in areas of the house, but they didn't clean up everything, and she was completely naked, and horrible things had happened to her. So then what happens is they can't find anything, but they do collect DNA. So they know it's a male, and they have DNA because of what had happened to her SA stuff. So what ends up happening is that that was 2015. So Mark Anthony does a show in 2017, April of 2017. At least that's when the show airs. So March or April of 2017. And then in 2018, they do find somebody. So other things that aren't mentioned in the video that we just watched with the doctors is that ABC 15 Arizona, that's the one who's really following this case. They do a video summing up all the information that they know as of today. And that was sometime in 2025. I think it was 2025. Yeah, March 5th, 2025. This ABC 15 Arizona. They interviewed the father, and he was talking about this story, and he's texting her and all that stuff. And then he called the police. The police showed up right after the time that the boyfriend found her, lots of trauma on the body. And the father's going on. Police say the attacker took Allison's Tiffany bracelet, her iPhone 6, and her credit cards. So it looks like it's a crime of theft. It doesn't look like it's a crime of revenge or anything like that, unless they were trying to make it look like that's like not a crime of passion, but they took valuable things from the woman. Remember when the iPhone 6 was valuable? That's how long ago this was. So in 2018, they take the DNA and they put it into the database that they had, and nothing had come up before that. But finally, they end up getting a result to a person who's in prison, and it turns out to be this guy's brother who's in prison. And the way they worded it in the news account, it's hard to tell if the brother was in prison for DUI or if the man they finally think is the criminal is there for a DUI. But they figure out using genetic genealogy, which is where they use family trees to figure out who the person must be who has the DNA, who's the common link. It's complicated, but it's fascinating. And let me tell you, if you want to get into something now as a career, get into this DNA and genetic genealogy, because it is going to be phenomenal, breaking cases wide here real soon. As soon as we can get to a point where it's cheaper to do this kind of stuff. It's a lot of legalities concerning this DNA things, but we'll talk about that in a second. All right, so they arrest a man who's 41 years old. His name is Ian, I-A-N, M-I-T-C-H-E-N. That's his name. Ian Minchin. He was working and living in Scottsdale, Arizona. He hadn't fled the state. He was in town. He's working at a deli. And the police come and arrest him outside of the deli one day. And they interviewed a bunch of his coworkers. And they're like, oh my gosh, what's going on? So what ends up happening is in 2023, so this guy's been in jail since 2018. So in 2023, the attorneys for Mitchin Mitchum get the DNA thrown out because they say that it was against his constitutional right for illegal search and seizure because he didn't approve to have his DNA used against him. And it shouldn't have been in the system in the first place. But apparently, and again, the story gets a little confusing the way it's reported, Mitchum ended up going to jail for a DUI. And even though they said the brother, but maybe it was both. He had a huge drinking problem, somebody mentioned. So what happens is he goes to jail, they take his DNA, and Ian Mitchum signs a form that says in 90 days that DNA will be thrown out and it will not be used against him for anything else ever again. It's just, I guess they put it into the system to see if he had any priors or anything of that sort. So I'm not sure when that was, but it must have been prior to 2018. So the judge throws it out and says, yeah, he signed a form that the DNA was only supposed to be in the system for 90 days, and it was way after 90 days, and it didn't get thrown away, and so the DNA is no longer admissible. Now, the DNA apparently is all they have. All they have is the DNA. I read another thing that was written by the attorneys for Ian, and they're saying that there's no connection whatsoever to this guy to her. None. No, nothing. So the DNA is all they have. So, okay, so it's thrown out in 2023. So then the state takes it to the next higher court. And that court met with a bunch of judges and explained what was going on. And that court said, yes, you can use the DNA. What they're saying is that because Ian has 2 felonies, and see, the news reports are really vague because what do you mean he's got 2 felonies? Where do these 2 felonies come up? Something about DNA being taken from him when he had a DUI, but now there's 2 felonies. We don't know what's going on about that. But because the guy has 2 felonies, the judge decided that this would be okay to allow the DNA in because since he was in the system, it would eventually have been in the system again. So, and not with a sign off on 90 days, we're going to throw this DNA result away. Okay. So they finally decided that was going to be okay. So he was going to be able to go to court and be tried using the DNA evidence. And that was the highest court in Arizona. So then his attorneys take it to the U.S. Supreme Court. I'm telling you, this DNA stuff is just wild. It is absolutely, the laws on this are wild. So we've got to get to a point where we can get this all police departments know how to handle the protocol on this stuff and how it's all needs to be, discussed and we need to know where we stand, because we can't have cases thrown out just because some little tiny, something wasn't quite done right, because they want to bend over backwards to make sure they're doing it correctly for the person who's accused. And that's a legal system here in the United States. I know some people have a hard time believing that, but that is how it's done. So they went to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the U.S. Supreme Court decided they would not hear the case. And what happens whenever they say, we're not going to hear the case, is that the lowest ruling, which was the Arizona Supreme Court, their ruling stands. So as of December 2024, I believe, no, October, in 2024, it was finally decided that it's going to go to trial because we're going to allow this in, because it would have been in the database lawfully because he'd already had 2 felonies, and for some reason or other, it just wasn't in there yet. So a new trial date has been set in October 2025, this is August 2025. And Arizona is pursuing the death penalty. That's how confident they are they have this guy. So court documents, state investigators could not find a link between Allison and Ian, according to Ian's lawyers. And that's where we are. So some of you, especially if you're not from the United States, maybe you're a little vague about how this DNA stuff and courts and how it's going on. I do watch some true crime, and I'm more interested in the investigation and the court parts. That's much more interesting to me than the actual crime. But what's going on is, like, whenever Kohlberger, who's the guy who was just admitted that he was the person who murdered those four young people, college town in Iowa, when they got his DNA, and he went to court like crazy, like, oh, you can't use that DNA, you cannot do that. But the way they did it is they figured out they got the DNA from the crime scene, and then they put it into the database, and they went through all this genetic genealogy, and they figured out this is the guy. So then what the police have to do is they have to get a search warrant, and then they go and they find his DNA. Like, I think what they did is they watched him throw away trash, and then they went and got into the trash. They got the trash legally with a I think he threw the trash away at the neighbor's house. And then they went and got a search warrant, and they were able to take the trash, and then they were able to look at the DNA and say, yes, this confirms to the DNA we had at the scene. This also happened recently with another case where another cold case that was solved, where the man was they figured out who he was because of the DNA that was collected at the scene of the crime. And then they're following him around trying to figure out how to get the DNA from him. And they saw him take a bite out of a piece of pizza, a crust, and then throw it into the trash. And then the police immediately go over, after he's walked away from the trash can, and they pull up the crust of pizza, and they're able to get his DNA off of it because they had a warrant for his DNA, and they didn't want him to know. Another one that came up recently was a man. Again, they knew he was, because of the DNA left at the scene of the crime, they knew he was responsible, but of course they've got to get proof of that. So what they did is he was flying, he was, in transit, and they had this ruse where he walked go through security, and they said, oh, you got a random check, come into the office over here. And they sat him down, and there was all these water bottles, with the lids on them, and they were cold water bottles. And what happened is the guy picks up one of the water bottles, and he's drinking the water bottle, and they're like, whatever, doing a check on his luggage or some, it was just a delay of a few minutes. And then the guy left behind the water bottle, and then he left and went on his way. And then the police come in and they collect the water bottle, and they're able to get the DNA off of that. That's how much DNA you need now. I mean, it's not even like it used to be where you needed like chunks of DNA or something. Now it's just incredible what they can do with DNA. So they were able to take that off of the water bottle. So they had a warrant to get the DNA. All of these cases, these people are fighting it because they say that that's not, they have some kind of reasoning, and I think it's not working because they had a warrant to collect the DNA. But in this case, I don't think they had a warrant to get the DNA from him. They went in and they just said, you're guilty, we're arresting you, and brought you in. Well, they didn't say you're guilty, but they arrested him, brought him in, and based on this DNA sample that they had from the prison. So what they should have done is probably followed him around and got a warrant for something like it when he chewed gum or something and spit it out. They could go collect it. That seems to be the legitimate way of doing it. So police departments really need to make sure that they understand exactly the rules on how this stuff has to be done, because we cannot have, it needs to be with integrity for the person who is accused of the crime. We need to know for sure. And we don't want to infringe on their rights, because that's just the way our Constitution is. So it needs to be done correctly. And the police could have just followed him around waiting for him to make some kind of mistake. So now Mark Anthony, what else is I going to say about the court system? There's something else. Sorry, you guys, I don't keep a script. I think about what I'm going to say, and then it gets there. So that's part of the problem that's going on. So, oh, and also I read something that said that there's been delays again because I think that one of the judges they had who was going to be doing the court case in Scottsdale is friends with one of the doctors who was one of the witnesses or something, and so that judge has to recuse themselves. So it's just been delay after delay after delay. So this guy was found in 2018. He's been sitting in prison since then. It's now supposedly the court case is in 2025. I think we're on the fourth almost trial date. And so, we'll know sooner or later, hopefully soon, what actually ends up happening. The other thing that, I'm sorry, you guys. The other thing that is been fought when this genealogy DNA, I remember with Kohlberger also, what happens is when you get your DNA done, it goes into these databases and you're supposed to opt in for allowing the police to be able to look at your DNA. And some websites have that set up. And there are some people like myself who have voluntarily said, here you go, you can look at my DNA for possible crimes or whatever like that. Not me so much. What it does is it narrows it down. When you're doing genetic DNA and you're doing these family trees and stuff, it's like your great grandparents is where they're at, and the great grandparents, and they work down the family tree, and then they get to a point where great grandma and great grandpa have a child, and that child has children, and they can follow it down there, and it narrows it down to like this child or that child, and then they look at the histories of the two children, like if there's two brothers, they'll say which one was in the area at that time. Like one might have been overseas, or one might have been incarcerated somewhere at a certain time that the crime is committed. So then they go to the second, they go to the other brother, and then they have to weed out all sorts of things. Hopefully there's not a missing brother that had been adopted away or something, but it gets very confusing, but they know what they're doing. And so in the Kohlberger case, and I think some of the others, they're saying that it's not good. We can't be allowing people's DNA from other people, family members, that they're responsible for being found out. So these are court cases that are wiggling their way through the system because this is all new technology that has to be addressed, and we have to come up with some guidance, some best practices on how to deal with this kind of stuff. So it gets confusing and it takes time because, oh my gosh, these court cases, they can take forever. All right, sorry. So let's go back to Mark Anthony. He told us all this information. He told us he'd left the state. No, this guy had not left the state. He was still living and working in Scottsdale. He gave us the names of Frank, Franklin, or what was the first name? Frank, I think I've turned too many pages. Frank, Franklin, parents. So no reference to those that have come up that we know of. She knew the person. Well, apparently she did not know the person. That she was feeling apprehensive on that Monday night. Well, maybe, we don't know. That he will get caught and end up in jail. Well, he did get caught a year later, and he did end up in jail. He's there now waiting for trial, but he didn't mess up. One of the things that Mark Anthony says is this guy's going to mess up and he's going to get caught. So he did not mess up. As far as we know, he didn't do anything other than whatever these other felonies are. And even still, they didn't take his DNA except for that one time when he had that DUI that should have been thrown away, the DNA results. So he didn't mess up. There was no messing up. He didn't commit another crime. He didn't, that we know of, in that way, leaving his DNA. So we don't know. We don't know anything about, does Gemini or 18 have anything to do with this? She doesn't apparently knew the attacker. There was precipitating events or provoking. No, we don't know anything about that. Anything to do with Monday or Tuesday or Monday or Tuesday? No, we don't know anything about that. The police didn't look like they were overlooking evidence. They had no evidence. It looked like it was a random, as far as we know right now, it looks like she was just chosen at random. And nothing to do with emails. So it gets down to really just wasting police time. And then this poor woman who's murdered, her whole life, was just down to making money for this doctor show and all the other spin-offs and people, these grief vampires like Mark Anthony, who were just selling books off of her name. And he's going to do a mini docu-series on a cold case, solving a cold case, which I assume is this one. It's just really sad, isn't it? So I'm making this video August of 2025, as I said. September, October, we're 2 months away from what we think is the trial that's going to happen in October of 2025. I mean, it's eventually going to have to happen, right? So once that trial comes out, let's revisit this. I wanted to get this all documented right now in advance before I knew anything. And let's see if Mark Anthony had any help whatsoever. Maybe these names do come up in the court case. Maybe it's important. Maybe they're going to call in Mark Anthony to the court. Not likely. Maybe a lot of things. We just don't know. Maybe there was a connection between him and her. Maybe there was. They never proved a connection between Kohlberger and the 4 students that he murdered. There's nothing, absolutely nothing. Not now that the court case, now that Kohlberger has admitted guilt, they're releasing a lot of the information, and the police have saying we searched everywhere and we went through everything, and there's nothing. All those rumors you've heard about Kohlberger being linked to these women, nothing. Absolutely no contact, no social media, no pretend accounts that were following them, nothing, no photos, nothing. Just random as far as we can tell. So, and until Kohlberger says something, I don't think we're ever going to be able to do anything for that. So, all right, we'll revisit this if and when we get a case in October. We'll revisit it even after that. So remind me if I don't, but let's just keep watching and seeing if maybe Mark Anthony is actually correct. And I will have to come back and say, boy, I blew it. He was right all along, and the police should have listened to him. I still don't think there was anything that would have led him to the police to find this guy. But how could I forget? OMG, I didn't show you the photos. Susan Gerbic, I tell you, I have to show you the photos of this guy because he said he's fit with a pot beer belly, and he's got brownish hair, brownish chestnut hair. That's what he said. Let me show you what this guy looks like. Let me put the picture so you can see it. Ready? There he is. So he's physically fit, probably. This man has no hair and has had no hair for a while. He's got reddish hair. I guess that could be chestnut in some books. We got more photos. There's another one. Okay. Let's look at his body, because supposedly he's got a beer belly. Let's see what his beer belly looks like. And here he is just after he's been arrested. They've arrested him out in front of the deli, and they're taking him to the police area. And you can see this is not a man who had a full head of hair up until recently. This is 2018. So the crime was committed in 2015. And in 2017 is when Mark Anthony saw a man with reddish hair, not reddish hair, chestnut brown hair. And here's another picture. And this is taken at the day of his arrest, I believe. Look at that. Look at that beard. That's red hair. That is red hair. And this is not a man who's just recently lost his hair. So I don't know what he saw, but it was not this. And then here's another one of him in court for one of his hearings. You can see. There he is. This is, like I said, this is a man who's probably been bald for a very long time. That is red hair. And I didn't see no beer belly on this guy at all. I mean, maybe there was a beer belly on him, but it wasn't much. And that was what I was going to show you, is this beer belly. This is the shirt. It's just kind of, he's leaning forward and it's kind of forward on him a little bit. So I don't, it's just kind of pulled out like this. So I don't see her beer belly, at least not a beer belly that the police would have been able to say, oh my gosh, you're looking for a guy with a beer belly. No. So I completely forgot to show you those photos. I'm so sorry, you guys. So yes, that man that was arrested looks nothing like a man that was vaguely described by Mark Anthony this is the person to look for. I mean, he could have said, hey, he's got a red beard, he's completely bald, he's about 40, he's white, he's about so tall. She says she knows him, so I mean, she should have been able to give him a lot of information about the guy. Anyway, okay, so that's what he looks like, and he looks nothing like the person that was described by Mark Anthony, which is the point. Take care, everyone.